Hello, my name is Nick Pono, and I'm super excited to present this course on how to conduct effective customer and user interviews. And this course will be perfect for entrepreneurs, go-to-market, and product team. All right, first, let's talk about what you're going to get out of this course. You will learn how to apply fundamental principles of effective customer interviews, why it is important to talk to your customers, how to make effective customer interviews, what you should anticipate when you're conducting customers will be all part of it. Then we'll learn about designing customer interview strategy and script. And in this section, we'll talk about business objectives, research objectives, how to create hypotheses, how to create target audiences, and specifically how to design questions and what questions do you want to look for in order to find a very specific insight. Then we're going to learn about conducting engaging customer calls. And this is going to cover tips and practices of how to manage customer calls. What are the things you need to say, how to drive the conversation. And it's extremely important to have those skills developed in order to conduct an effective customer interview. And finally, we're going to talk about synthesizing interview feedback and how do you summarize, how do you analyze, and what do you do with that feedback next. Your business goal was to create ideal customer profile or create a strategic messaging or create the first MVP product. How do you get that feedback from the customers and move on into achieving those goals? I will include frameworks, templates, and examples over this course so that you will have a great understanding of how to conduct effective customer interviews. All right, so this course is perfect for the founders because as an entrepreneur or a founder, you're looking to build the first version of your product, whether it's MVP or proof of concept, and it's important for you to understand customers and understand what angle do you want to come up and what are the other competitive forces or alternatives. So that's a very important skill for founders. It is also important for product team. And in product teams, mostly product managers are those who lead customer interviews. And it is important for them because it will drive what kind of features they will build or what kind of roadmap they will have for those customers. And for the go-to-market teams, it is also important how to conduct customer interviews and learn what things needs to be done and how to implement them and how to plan for them. Because if you want to create ideal customer profile or strategic messaging or a new campaign, you also might benefit from talking to your customers in order to make those more effective. All right, so this course will have 5 sections. And the first section is going to be about understanding, structuring, and effective customer interviews. Then we're going to move into the planning of customer interviews, and it's going to be the biggest, the largest section because about 75 to 80% of all work and all the success is actually in the planning stage. Then we'll talk about how to set up these calls, how to do the outreach, and we're going to talk about conducting customer interviews, and finally, summarizing and analyzing feedback. In terms of a session, we're going to have 4 sessions. This session is going to be about introductions and understanding customer interviews. Then we're going to have a video about planning customer interviews. And the third video, we're going to talk again about planning interviews because the planning interviews is the largest section and it's going to be a lot of details about products, about questions, about thinking through the strategy of that. And in the first session video, we're going to talk about setting up, conducting, summarizing, and analyzing customer interviews and what to do next. All right, a little bit about myself. I'm a product manager and product-led growth, marketing, and go-to-market leader. I have worked with multiple companies as a consultant and as a full-time employee. And my experience is all about building, managing, and growing enterprise and consumer products. So I had a few startup experiences myself where I was building the product, and together I have conducted over 300 customer interviews. And everything you hear during this course is something that I have tried, tested, and analyzed so that you can benefit from those customer interviews. And I'm super excited to present it to you, and I hope you find this helpful. But first, You see this logo, and I'm presenting this at GTM Institute YouTube channel, and I'm super excited because I created this brand, and my mission is to empower entrepreneurs and go-to-market team with strategies, tactics to build, market, and grow great products. And a part of it is about providing those proven strategies, about giving people tools in order to achieve their goals of building, marketing, and growing products. So before we start, I would really appreciate if you like and subscribe. If you have comments or questions, please leave it in the comments. I will answer your questions. And if the question will require more than just typing, I will create another video and I will answer that question, because I'm sure that if you have it, it's going to be somebody else who will probably have the same questions. And not everything could be covered during this course, so asking questions or clarification is important. Also, I will provide templates and frameworks. So if you're going to have a link here. If you're interested, I would appreciate if you're going to get them, and hopefully we'll find them helpful. All right. First of all, before we start, I wanted to present to you sort of the biggest 10 mistakes in interviewing the customer. And sometimes it's effective to think about biggest mistakes because they will give you an idea what you need to change. And I want to give this value right away, because if you haven't, you're not going to listen to the end of it, like you're going to have a lot of information here that you're going to take on with you. So number one, not talking to your customers. It's the biggest mistake. You'll be surprised. There's a lot of companies, a lot of teams who are not talking to the customers enough or often enough. And the reasons could be because they are busy, or because they're uncomfortable conducting customer interviews, or because they do not feel that talking to the customers get them to the next level. Second mistake is that focusing on validating solution rather than validating the problem. A lot of the times I see companies and teams go in and they showcase some solution and they present some mock-ups or designs, and they ask them to customers to tell them whether they like it or not. And the most important element of customer interviews is understanding the context, validating the problem, and understanding all the feelings and emotions that the customer has around it and the importance of that problem. And that comes before the actual solution, because it's not their job to tell you what to build, and you might be ineffective if you're just going to build whatever they tell you. But the best teams just understand inherently what the customer has to go through on a daily basis. Number three, not setting a business or research objective. So this is basically a mistake where people say, well, I'm going to schedule some calls, I'm going to jump on the call, just ask them about what the biggest problem is, and they haven't done some research, due diligence, and they haven't thought about what they want to get out of it. So number two is not conducting pre-discovery due diligence and research. What I mean by that is, especially if you're building a new product or something that you're not particularly knowledgeable about, what you need to do is a little bit due diligence. Look around about what's it's out there around this problem. Look at the market research, Google, use AI tools, understand a little bit of the environment in which you're going to conduct those customers interviews, because you will be more effective. You're going to design more thought-provoking questions, and you're going to have a conversation with the customers. The customers will feel like you understand what you're talking about. Number five, interviewing the wrong audience. Well, this is especially prevalent in enterprise or B2B sales, because there's going to be multiple people involved in the buying decision. And if you don't properly structure your interview process, that you can talk to a different representation of the buying cycle, whether they're a decision maker or an influencer, or a decision maker or an influencer, or the user of the product, you will get different results. Yes, there's going to be some research objectives where you just want to talk to decision makers, or sometimes you're going to want to talk just to the users, and sometimes you want to talk to a broader audience who involved in buying decisions. So talking to the right audience is important. Number six is not creating customer interview and this interview script. And this is also a big mistake, because you might think that you know what questions you want to ask, but interview is still a little bit of a stressful exercise. You're going to jump on a call, you're going to talk to people you don't know, and sometimes you're going to forget. So preparing the script and reading through that script, and over time, it's not just like you're going to be jumping on the call and reading from those questions, but over time, when you're going to reviewing the script, when you create the script, you're going to have a better map of those questions and how to manage that interview on the call. Number 7, not asking enough open-ended questions. We're going to talk about it a little bit more, but the most important question type during customer interviews are open-ended questions, meaning that you ask them, tell me about something. And that open-ended questions allow customers to think about the problem and slowly walk you through the different steps of answering that question. And these open-ended questions allow you to learn more about the context and about the customer and about the customer's context in which he or she makes the decision. Number 8, not focusing on context, not validating problem priority level. So what that means is that very often we make different decisions in a different context. So the good example here is actually problem priority level, right? If you are trying to solve the problem that is number 4 or 5 in the priority level for that person, that's not going to be important enough. For example, if the problem you're trying to solve for your target audience is in the top 3 or top 2 or number 1. So understanding of how the problem you're trying to fix applies or compares to other things that they have on their plate is extremely important. And a lot of teams or a lot of individuals miss when they do that during the customer interview. Number 9, not recording the meetings and not summarizing interview notes. I started doing my customer interviews in 2016, I believe. And about that time, it was super difficult there was not a lot of tools. So you have to get on the phone and you had to write down, and there was no recording option. So it was super difficult to do. But right now, there's a lot of great tools for video conferencing, for recording, for even summarizing your feedback with AI. Number 10, the biggest mistake is not conducting continuous customer discovery. What it means is that teams, do customer interviews as sort of exercise or as a phase once a year, but they do not have a plan to do a continuous customer discovery interview. So if you're going to get anything out of this first video, those 10 mistakes that you want to think about to avoid, and I will talk about every single step, every single of them, and how to improve them. So let's move into the session 1 and how to understand how to create effective customer interviews. Well, the first question is, should you listen to your customers? And I know very, very generic questions, and everybody's, of course you have to listen to your customers. But let me share a few quotes with you, right? There is a famous Henry Ford quote that everybody's heard, that if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And there's also a great quote by Steve Jobs that it's really hard to design products by focus group. A lot of the times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Right. And on the other side, you have Steve Blank, the father of lean startup methodology, who said that, you cannot build startup in a vacuum. You have to get in front of the customers. You have to get out of the office, and you have to talk to your prospecting customers often enough so you can understand their needs. And there's a great quote by Jeff Bezos, who said that the good inventor and designer need to deeply understand the customer. And a lot of this understanding is intuition. And that intuition comes from anecdotes that could not otherwise be taken from surveys, because surveys are very structural. You can only know how they think about this problem, but surveys will not going to tell you about some problem that you haven't thought about. You don't know the things that you don't know. But who's right? There's 2 camps. Talk to the customers and do not talk to the customers. So I think it's a false dichotomy. I think this is a few things, and as often the question is somewhere in between. It's a false dichotomy. You need to talk to your customer. It is essential for you to talk to the customer. However, it's also important how you talk to the customer, meaning that do not expect that they will tell you what to build or what to do. when you talk to the customers, think about understanding their problems, the context. So don't expect the customers to tell you about the product or the feature to build. Think about them as a resource to learn about their problem and the context and their organizations and their teams and their KPIs and their objectives and everything that might help you with your business objective that you're trying to achieve during those customer interviews. All right, I want to give you this case study. My first product management role back in 2010 was at Monster.com. So Monster.com was one of the first job boards started back in '94 and used to be a huge website. And in 2010, their market value were about $10 billion. So at that time, Facebook was quite new. There's a lot of competitors at LinkedIn. So what happened is that the Monster team, and I was part of the product organization at Monster, has created this secret project called Be Known. And Be Known basically wanted to build a competitor to Branch Out app on Facebook. So Branch Out was an app that basically connected to your Facebook and saw what friends do you have and help you find jobs based on your social profile. So Monster thought, oh my God, this is a competitive threat. We're going to lose the social. Let us enter the social game. And they decided to build this Be Known app. But what happened? Monster released it, but almost got no traction at all. And a few years later, the Facebook released an update and also killed this app. And the story of Monster, when they were valued at around $7.5 billion in 2016, I believe when I was at Monster 2010, it was about $10 billion. In 2016, it was sold for 400, like more than 10x less that used to value because a lot of the business was taken out by LinkedIn. But also recently, I believe they emerged with Career Builder and worth even less. So what happened? Well, they conducted 0 customer interviews. They created this super closed group, super secretive. They had a separate office. Everybody not supposed to talk about what they were building there. They also had their own assumptions. Instead of just talking to the customers and understanding that customers at that time in 2010 do not want to use Facebook to find jobs because Facebook at that time was primarily for young individuals, and those individuals have communications on Facebook that didn't want their prospective employer to see or their co-workers to see because there was no such it was just a separate island. And Monster.com never talked to the customers to understand. The only thinking that they had is that, oh my God, this app is on Facebook and we want to build a competitor. The third piece is that they don't have any continuous discovery, customer discovery culture at Monster.com at that time. So it's not just that did not talk to the customer as part of this project. They actually, I don't ever experience talking to the customers when I was at Monster.com. And I don't think that they had a culture in the product to create a continuous customer discovery. All right. So I want to continue with this quote, and I'm a big Peter Drucker fan. I think that everybody should take some time and read his essay. There's a great book, Essential Peter Drucker Collection of his essays that talks about sometimes very obvious and banal things about business, but they're very profound in a way if you start to understand and apply them in your career. And one of the best quotes, and I think this sort of fundamental business quote, is that the purpose of business is to create a customer, right? And I think the word here is to create, no, not to find, but create, because you create demand and you create, when you have a new product, you create demand so the customer could be attracted to that demand. And therefore, there's only 2 primary functions of business, innovation and marketing, right? I would add personal, there's probably operations as well. But what I mean in innovation is about sort of your product teams, your design, your engineering, everything that build with building and what to build. And then the marketing is everything that deals with marketing the problem to getting them to market and to selling the product. So this is an important quote and I love it. And the reason why I presented it here is to emphasize that both of those, innovation and marketing, require you to understand the customer. So both innovation and marketing also require you to talk to the customers effectively and figure out how to do it effectively. So why do you want to improve your customer interview skills? Well, I'm going to give you some examples from my experience, and those are very painful examples. Sometimes you kind of build a few products from scratch myself as a part of founding a company and a product. And sometimes prospects tell you, well, they like the idea, but when you create this and you show it to them, they don't want to use it. They're not just using it. They say they wanted something like that, but they never use it. Others, sometimes, and maybe that happened to you, the customers requested a new feature, and I've also been part of this. But when you build these features, they're not using it. And it's also kind of blows your mind a little bit like, well, you asked for that feature. You told us you want to have this. But it's actually uncovering the deeper problem. You really wanted to hear what to build, but you haven't researched enough the underlying problems, the context. And now when they see the solution, they're not going to use it because there's something missing. An example of that, my personal experience of buying a couch. Also, prospects sometimes say that they would buy, but when the things are coming out, the product is out, feature is out, they don't want to buy. They were excited. Some of them might use it, but they're not going to buy it. That also uncovers that maybe you haven't probed the willingness to pay for this problem, or willingness to, or what kind of level of values they're going to receive from solving this problem or using that product. So if those things sounds familiar, effective customer interviews will not eliminate them completely, those problems, but they will reduce those problems significantly. You're going to save time. You're going to build better products. You're going to build better strategies. You're going to build better go-to-market. So that's why it is important to conduct customer interviews in an effective way. Now, this is a little bit of a side note, but I think it's important to talk about because as a part of this course, I'm going to be talking about customer interviews, prospect interviews, user interviews, and I use them interchangeably because you might want to talk to different types of those users. However, if you want to be precise, there's different definitions. And if you're in a product organization, it's important to differentiate prospects, users, and customers. So prospects are those people who do not pay for your product or do not use your product, but they're a good target. Somebody who visits your website but didn't sign up, for example, as a prospect. Somebody that you're reaching out that would be an ideal customer target for you, or a profile that you want to sell to, but they do not know about your product and they're not using it yet. Now, the users are those people who already use your product. They could be on a free plan, they could be on a trial, or sometimes they could be a customer as well. So there's the user is the customer. There's sort of overlap here depending whether you have product like growth, motion, or you have a free trial or freemium. And the customers is very simple, those people who are actually paying you for your product. So again, I'm going to use the terms interchangeably, but it is important for me, and I think for you to understand that there is slight changes if you want to use these terms properly in your day-to-day environment. Now, when talking to the customers, what you should and shouldn't focus on. When they're helpful customer interviews and where they're not helpful. And you could pause the video for a second here and think about, I want you to kind of like think about when are the customer interviews are helpful and where they're not. All right, so they are helpful when you need to understand your customer, and there's different levels of understanding your customers. We kind of spoke with them, but when you're thinking about what is the problem or pain the customer have, the needs, the context you want to understand, you want to know the daily life and responsibilities, feelings, aspirations, goals, activities that they do, decision-making processes. All of these types of information will be super, super helpful. And you should conduct customer interviews if you wanted to find or get answers to any of those. Now, when you shouldn't, what you shouldn't focus on, or when it is not or less helpful of conducting customer interviews, are those that we just talked about a little bit, like whether they like or dislike a product feature. Like it's a very specific. You probably shouldn't be just judging by customer interviews, and you'll probably not be able to rely on the feedback from your customers based on whether they like or dislike. Don't expect your customers to tell you what product to build, what feature to prioritize. Do not expect that they'll tell they're going to buy this product. Have to figure out and understand the value that the product would provide or a problem they could solve, and then sort of estimate the value. And you're also not going to be understanding whether you need that feature or they need that feature or they don't. So in order for you to conduct effective customer interviews, focus on understanding the customer and focus less on asking the question about specific products or specific features, because you're not going to get the answers that you're looking for, or the answers might be misleading. Now, when we talk about outcomes of customer interviews, I'll give you a few examples here. When we talk about understanding customer interviews, you could be doing that to create a proof of concept or POC. You also can will be helpful for you to understand customer when you create a customer profile, deal customer profile, or strategic messaging or brand story. When it comes to know what to build, there's two pieces here, right? One is about new product, how to discover, validate, hypothesis, values, all of it about the new product. And if you have an existing, it will help you discover, how to expand product, what other problems you can solve, how to collect feedback, what are the values and the features that you want to deliver based on that analysis of customers. And then customer interviews are also great at testing product concepts as well. Now, this is a customer discovery process outlined by Steve Blank in his Lean methodology. And basically, he's saying that every single company goes through different stages, right? Like a customer discovery, customer validation, customer creation, and building a company. So during the customer discovery stage, you want to figure out sort of the vision and the things around hypothesis of how to drive this vision, or what are the things that would help you build that product and understand that there's something in this particular area that you want to validate and build upon. Now, in the customer validation stage, this is where you're testing business models and repeatable and scalable, meaning that in the first you just discover some problem you want to solve. In the customer validation, you're basically just trying to figure out like how to sell it, how to build it, how to sort of validate this need. Then you move into the customer creation. And customer creation is a start of execution. It builds end user demand and drives sales channels and scales the business. So this is where you're releasing the product, you're getting the first customers, you're scaling them. And in the final stage, at the company building stage, it's basically transition from a startup to a growth or more mature organization where you're thinking about scalability and how to expand on the value, how to capture value from your customers. So I wanted to give you that because I think it is important to see that customer interviews is actually essential for every single step of those. It's not just where you do the customer discovery and you move on, right? It's just the customer interviews is important in discovery and validation, creation, and even after you already pass product market fit and you're building scaling your company, that's where it becomes important. Now, if you think about sort of the product roadmap or the product delivery process, right? You basically have, and sometimes it's displayed, I should have put it here as sort of this infinity sign, right? From one standpoint, you have a discovery, and from another standpoint, you have a delivery, right? When you discover, that's basically you have a concept, you have an idea, you need to pre-validate, to measure it, all of this done through the customer interview so that you can build out your first requirement, your PRD, product requirement doc, or your MVP requirement, or whatever. The second part is about delivery, and it's more about delivering product to customers and validating through feedback. So this is more about building, delivering, validating, scaling, and also measuring and analyzing. Here you will have some sort of product analytics and you'll maybe run a few tests, but it's still important to ensure that you're talking to the customers. And the reason why I give you the structure for discovery and delivery as a product process, because again, the customer interviews will help you in both and are required in both in order for you to build effective product. All right. So let's talk about discovery. And discovery is a process of understanding the customers and actual process of eliciting feedback in a different way. And there's two primary categories here, qualitative and quantitative feedback. The qualitative feedback includes things like customer interviews, online product review that you can read and analyze, in product feedback that they can send you, hey, I like this, I don't like that. It's also could be in the newsletters and articles. If you have a large organization, somebody can write about you and criticize you for providing value or whatever. You can also monitor customer support calls. You can shadow sales calls and listen how your sales communicates with the customers. You can also read industry news and maybe some reports to understand, like, okay, what is this sort of environment? And all of this is qualitative feedback. Now, there's also quantitative feedback. The quantitative feedback is something that's more aligned with like data and more data-driven type of data-informed feedback. And typically that's surveys. There's also product analytics and data, because obviously when people using your product, they kind of provide you with the feedback of what they deem valuable or not. And sometimes product analytics is a great way because you don't have to ask them. The action speaks for themselves. And the most effective way to answer some questions in terms of what to build and how to build it is product experimentation and A/B testing. However, when you think about sort of qualitative and quantitative about new and existing products, and you kind of try to map like what were different type of feedback plays in terms of new product and existing product, and I use this typical 2x2 matrix. What I wanted to showcase here that the customer interview is probably the only way to talk and to get feedback from the customers that you don't know yet. And this is super important for the new products, but also for existing products where you don't know what to ask. Everything that on a quantitative side, you will only know if you already have a product, already somebody using it. But everything is everything on qualitative side that's not customer interviews are about getting feedback from third-party tools. And the only way to get sort of first experience and first information and value and insight is talking to your customers directly, and you can only do that from a customer interviews. And the basic point here that customer interviews is probably the most effective way in terms of getting the feedback. Let's talk a little bit about what makes effective customer interview. The first one is surprising insight, because if you conduct customer interview and you don't learn anything, and there's nothing out of 10, 20 interviews that you had with the customers that were eye-opening, then you aren't learning anything, that you just wasted your time. Second is you want your customers interview feedback be actionable. It's actually not the feedback should be actionable, but the interviews themselves will be actionable, so that you can learn something that you can then take on and do something about. You also need to ensure or remember that you can't please everybody, right? And I love this quote, the product for everyone is a product for no one. But it is important that it's going to be instances where you're going to interview somebody who's not your target audience, and they will not fit your customer profile, and they don't experience this problem. And that's okay. You can't talk, it's very difficult to build a product for everyone like Google or Facebook or Instagram. A lot of the times you need to focus on a very important segment and use that segment in terms of building the understanding what needs to be created by your company or your product team. Now, it is essential for you to get closer to the customers, because the closer you get to the customers than your competitors, the more likely you are to win. And I would like to give you a great example of Toys R Us versus Amazon. And this is an example that I have researched myself, and it's super, super interesting that Toys R Us basically filed for bankruptcy a few years ago. And when professionals starts to analyze what happened, is that they can determine that the first problem started when they made a partnership with Amazon at the beginning of 2000s. The internet was just starting, an Amazon approach to them with a partnership, like saying like, hey, we have this marketplace online, let us handle all the selling, let's us held all the deliverable. You just provide the inventory and we have this great collaboration in between. So what happened is that Amazon was closer to the customers. They were learning and they were experimenting what kind of toys people buy, what combination of toys people expect to buy. And they learn a lot they generate a lot of data about the customers, learn about the customers. And then when they had an opportunity, they started creating their own products, or given that they have already a demand, they could find a different supplier of those toys. And that's how they actually overtook the Toys R Us, and slowly but surely Toys R Us died because overall brick and mortar stores have been decreasing and they did not have a proper online presence in order to compensate for it. Now, the second example is mine, and I really have learned a lot from it, and I hope you're going to do that as well. So when I was in Barracuda, and Barracuda is email security solution, and I was managing their free email security scanner, which was the primary demand generation engine for their email security flagship product. And when I joined Barracuda, the first thing we've done is we redesigned the sign-up process and we redesigned the product itself. And the goal was to reduce multiple steps in sign-up process to make it more visual appealing, that first scan that IT managers do. And we had a tremendous amount of success. But then when we launched, we had a sales people start pinging me and my team and saying, "Hey guys, where's DMARC?" And DMARC is a more technical term. It's something to do with domain security. You don't have to know that. But basically, we were surprised to hear about it, because when we talked to the customers, during sign-up process redesign, we talked to the customers during the actual product redesign, but we never heard the importance of DMARC. And then the sales teams had to explain to us that, yes, most of the customers do not know about DMARC, or it is important for us because when we get on the sales calls, we actually explain the DMARC is important for them to worry about. We educate them, and this is actually one of the primary selling points. So don't expect your customers to tell you what to do. Remember, also involved other parts of your organization because it might be helpful. Sometimes the role of you as a product manager or your organization is to educate the customer something they don't know. So don't take something customer says at face value. One of the great phrase that I'd like to use is that customer is always right until they're wrong. And this is a perfect example where the customer thought DMARC is not necessary for them. But if you want to build a secure email solution for your organization, DMARC is an important element. And finally, I want to point out the context is key, because the context can change the decisions and may change what people perceive as a problem and a value. If you have this problem in the context where it doesn't happen often, then that's not be as valuable solving this problem as when the context is different. And this is a great TED Talk, and I'll provide a link to it. I want you to listen. If you decide it's helpful, is basically a Big Mac example, and this is just a thought exercise. Imagine, if you're in a city and you see McDonald's and you're hungry, do you want to buy a Big Mac, or do you want to use any other options that you have? Or, for example, if you drive through the highway in the middle of nowhere, you see this the resting stop. You stop. There's McDonald's, a couple other options. Or how much would you pay for it? Or think about being on a plane. Somebody sits in front of you and opens this, Big Mac, and you got stuck on the plane. There's no food, for example, for you to get, and there's going to be a 10-hour flight, and you're extremely hungry, and you, for example, offer to buy this Mac because you're hungry. How much would you pay, right? Maybe the $20 and $30 for a Big Mac doesn't sound that bad, but that's kind of the things you want to think about. And another example I want to give you is my personal one is buying a couch. A few years ago, I was buying a couch and I went to the furniture store, and this person greeted me and she was asking me questions about what kind of material do I want in my couch, what color, the style that I prefer. And while answering all those questions, she provided some options to me. And when I looked at the options, I understood that it's not going to work for me because she never understand the context in which I was making decision. And the context for me that I have a certain room size. It's not large, so I probably cannot buy a large couch. I already have a certain furniture, right, in that room. I also have a certain elements of that room that might drive my decision. And none of those questions that she asked was about that. And that's why I realized there was a mismatch between what she showed me and my interest in those options, because my context was never understood well enough in that particular situation. So effective customer interviews should have surprising insight, to be actionable. You can't please everybody. Get closer to your customers, and context is key. Before we move on, you maybe have heard or seen this, but I want to provide this for you because I think it's important, and I want to provide this in the context of conducting customer interviews is known and unknown metrics. It's basically a framework to think about different types of information. So first, you think about known knowns. So those are the facts and requirements, things that we know to be true. And in terms of awareness and understanding, we understand what they are. And typically that would be like a first principles or the current KPIs. This is a known unknowns. And I think the great example of the first principle that part of the Amazon way is that customer always would want a cheaper product and want them to deliver quicker, right? This is known, so you don't necessarily have to validate them often. Now, you have known unknowns. So those are the known risks, the things that we know but can't predict. Aware, don't understand. So you're aware of it, but you don't understand. But think about this new demand for the new product, right? Who's going to buy it? Who's going to be a decision maker? How does this problem fit with other responsibilities? So we know that's going to be a set of unknowns and risk around launching a product. So that's the category. Now, unknown knowns are the hidden facts. So the things that are known, but they don't know them yet. So think about the market trends, changes, technology changes, and some of historical data. So, for example, you're not aware, but you understand. The good example here is if Federal Reserve increase interest rate, you know what's going to happen, right? You don't know when, but if that happens and you work in investment or in finance industry, you probably know what kind of impact you have. And the favorite part and why this matrix I think was created in the first place is unknown risk, which is unknowns, things we don't know that we don't know. We just ignore it because we're not aware of them, we don't understand them, and things that you're building your product and, for example, a large competitor comes in and builds the product competitive. Or, for example, the COVID-19 hits and there's no way for you to predict how this whole will disrupt supply chain. And there's also political or natural causes, hurricanes or political instability, wars and revolutions, for example. So think about this known unknown matrix, and there's a few places online to read, but important framework to think about, because what I do want to showcase to you is this framework that was created, and there's a links here to the author of this, is how to think about this 4x4 matrix from the perspective of the research. So known knowns are the things that you know about your industry or about the problem. Like, for example, you may know that marketers have to drive demand. This is like a very specific known knowns. Known unknowns is where you want to do research so that you decrease the amount of uncertainty. So you try to capture assumptions, create contingency for others. We know there are things that we can't predict. And we talked about, like, there's things we can't predict, but if they happen, we have plans for. For example, a data breach is something that we know could happen or will happen at some point, but we don't know what kind of impact that will have, right? Then unknown knowns, others know, but you don't know. So the others share and they're trying to be transparent, but you want to capture that. And unknown knowns is basically an experimentation process where you're trying to get those unknowns. And as a part of conducting customer interviews, you want to confirm known knowns, something that, as a marketer, I am conducting, my goal is to generate demand. Like this is for that team specifically, they'll know, right? Maybe somebody else there is right now managing that. Maybe it's CEO. When it comes to known unknowns, you want to estimate the impact, right? So the great example here is data bridge. What if we have a data bridge? How big of impact that would have? What do we need? What the plan would be like, and this type of you want to estimate when you do the customer interviews around that. Now, for unknown knowns, this is where you want to focus. This is where you want to learn about the problems. This is where you want to focus and organize most of your research. And then unknown knowns is something that if you conduct proper customer interviews, you will learn sometimes that things you haven't learned before, something you haven't been aware about, something that is very interesting, something that you don't know that would have impact on you or on the problem or on the product that you're trying to build. So think about that. I believe it's a very helpful framework and methodology. And as you think through customer interviews, try to think about what do you know, what you don't know, and the things that you know that the impact you will know, or the things that you don't know will happen, but the impact you will know. All right, I would like to give you this case study. And again, this is from my experience. I was intern at this startup in Boston, Massachusetts called AuctionPal. And that was basically a marketplace. And they wanted to build a marketplace for individuals who wanted to sell the consumer things that they don't want to or need to, and make it easy for them to sell it. So the way it worked is that you'll send an image to AuctionPal. We would estimate what it is, how much value it is, what's the size of it. We would send a shipping box to them, and then the customer will pack it and send it to the buyer, right? And they raised about $3 million in financing. And the question here is that, hey, what is the problem that might be here? What are the all different problems? And again, you can maybe stop and think through, like, what the problems? What could be wrong? And maybe they think a wrong picture. Maybe they're representing the product that when you do the estimation or sell the product, the buyer gets the product and they're not happy with it. And how do you do returns? But you would be surprised that the biggest thing that happened or the biggest thing that drove the unsuccessful, in my opinion, the startup becoming unsuccessful is the fact that there was unknown. Now, when you create an image and you sell a product and you send a shipping box to the customer to send it to the buyer, what happens is that you're sending empty boxes. And where we started doing that, and I was in charge of a lot of shipping and analyze what kind of boxes and shipping material do you need to put depending on whether it's fragile or not to that particular person. A lot of those boxes came broken because we were sending them in just empty boxes, and they would look sometimes bigger, but they would be empty. So they would in a delivery truck, they would put things on top of them. They would have holes in them, and by the time it gets to the customers for packaging, it was a big issue. Now, this is something of an example of unknown unknowns. It was difficult to understand the impact of this if you haven't had an opportunity to actually do it and try and send those boxes. And that's what I believe operationally made it super difficult to make this company work. Additionally, there was other problems like, again, misrepresenting the items that people have, and then how would you manage the sort of the sending it back and refunding. It's a lot of sort of extra operational expenses and worries that you would have. So that's kind of an example of unknown knowns that you sometimes unaware. So let's recap. At the end of the session, I want to kind of leave you with a few things, and I want to talk over them. First, Talking to your customers is important, but don't forget that it's not about asking them what to build, what feature. It's about understanding them, understanding their problem, pains, concerns, feelings, emotions, everything that about them. Two, there is two function of successful product and delivering successful product is discovery and delivery. Discovery is discovering and understanding and measuring the value of product will deliver. And delivery is basically implementing and seeing how the product gets to market and gets validation. And both of those require you talking to customers often and often enough. Three, customer interviews should have surprising insight and should be actionable and have context. So we talked about that. I think it's important if you just remember that it has to be insightful, actionable, and contextual. And the last one, successful new products can only be built in learning with learning customer needs. And this is where the whole goal of this customer interview course is to help you design customer interviews that get you with insightful problems, values, and pains that could be used in order to build successful products. So thank you so much. This was the first part of it. And just a quick reminder, please like and subscribe. If you have questions, leave it in a comment. If you need some templates around structuring and questions and script, you're going to have them as part of the link in the video below. Thank you very much. And next time in next session, we'll talk about planning customer interviews. Thank you.